Hello everyone, and welcome to the iSpring Solutions webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today as we are going to speak about quality assurance strategies for mobile training deployments. My name is Paulina and I am a community manager at iSpring, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Now let me please introduce our participants. As the main presenter, we have Mark Simon. Hello Mark, how are you doing today?
Good, Paulina. I accidentally had my mute button on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Yeah.
hear you perfectly.
Hi,
So,
everybody.
Thank you, Mark, for joining us today. Mark Simon is a principal training consultant at Highmark Solutions, and he has over 25 years of hands-on experience with design, development, and delivery of e-learning and instructor-led training. Mark is also an adjunct professor in instructional design graduate program at UMass Boston. As a co-presenter, we have Brian Tarr. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hi, doing great, thanks.
Perfect. Brian is our amazing video producer at iSpring, and you might have seen some of his videos on iSpring Solutions website or on our official YouTube channel. And last but not least, we have Anna Tsipliankova. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great, thanks.
Awesome. At the end of the webinar, Anna, our customer care manager, is going to announce a special bonus for all the webinar attendees. So guys, make sure to stay with us till the end. And also we're going to have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you're more than welcome to share them in the question box on the right side of your GoToWebinar panel. So I think at this point we are ready to start, and Mark, I'm passing over to you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Let's see. Let me switch over into my next slide deck. Okay, so thank you everyone for coming along. Today we're going to talk a little bit about QA strategies for mobile training deployments. I'm sure many of you know that iSpring offers a product that does amazing HTML5 and mobile-ready publishing for mobile applications, mobile lessons. So I know that for many of you in the instructional design world, you realize you already wear many, many different hats. If you're an instructional designer, of course, that might be your primary hat that you will wear. And then you sometimes have to be a graphic designer. And then at times you have to be a learning management system administrator. You have to be a SCORM expert, and so on and so forth. Well, what we're introducing now is a new hat, potentially, that you may have to wear. And this is caused for a number of different reasons, but testing your lesson is more and more important than ever. Okay, and why is it more important? So let's first of all take a look at some of our challenges that we've faced over time. So what we've got for starters or whatever, life was really, really simple back in 1985. We had text, basically CBT sort of systems that ran in text only. Then in 1990, we got Windows, and we had the ability to get a little bit more graphical. And then around 1995, we started getting more and more tools. Initially, there were just limited amount of tools that were available to us. In 1995, we saw a bunch of different tools, such as Asymmetrics Toolbox, Macromedia Authorware, and tools like that that came in, except they were a little hard to use. So in 2005, they got kind of complex. All right. Now, our latest challenge, you notice I've got the little apple here, is caused somewhat, at least, by Apple, or it basically was started by Apple when they said, okay, we're not going to support Flash. And all of a sudden it was like, well, there's a lot of iPads out there in the workplace. There's a lot of iPhones out there in the world. You know, what are we going to do about those Apple things? And so what we came up with was HTML5 as the answer. Okay, now here's our new challenge. Our new challenge, again, is not just necessarily the iPad or the iPhone, but there's many different devices out there. And so, we're an instructional designer. We used to basically build these lessons and then test them out on our workstation. If they worked on the workstation, no problem. They'd probably work somewhere else, all right? But we have so many different devices now, and then so many different browsers as well. There's never been more browsers. It used to be, what, Netscape and Internet Explorer was pretty much the only choices. So now we have a challenge. Our new challenge is basically build a lesson and then make sure that lesson works on as many platforms as possible. By the way, I meant to mention at the beginning, I cannot see chat messages, so I tend to ramble once in a while when I do these presentations. But I'm hoping that Polina or Brian or Anna will let me know if there's a chat question out there that needs to be asked.
Absolutely. Don't worry about that.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and for those that are out there, don't know how many there are of you. Looks like we got almost 50 right now. Please, don't hesitate to jump in with a question. I'm happy to try to address it, before the end of the session, in which case we will definitely have a Q&A. Okay, now how do we tackle this? Okay, there's a couple of ways to attack this, and as Polina said earlier, I'm an instructional designer. I'm a training consultant here in the Boston, Massachusetts area in the United States, and I do it a lot by trying to use iSpring as like number one. The number one here is HTML5, but I really find as I do my testing, and I test with a lot of different tools, that if I use iSpring and I build a lesson in iSpring, what I get on an iPad or tablet, and I've got also a Samsung tablet that I test on, or if I look on a phone, I really get that lesson exactly the way I built it, okay? And then some of the other tools, we can talk about this a little bit later, it's just kind of a little bit of a mixed bag, a little bit of a surprise. So anyway, one of the cures or whatever for getting through the Flash thing at least is HTML5, which opens up the door to be able to play on a mobile device. Okay, then we've got methodologies and tools. We'll talk a little bit about those. And then in terms of testing, we're going to go through a little vocabulary, and kind of a little philosophy in terms of, okay, what can I test? I just built this lesson for the last 4 weeks or 6 weeks or however long it took me to build the lesson. Do I have to go through 4 more weeks of testing? That's almost impossible. So we'll talk about that. And that number 4 bullet down there is qualification. And again, we'll address that as well. So I mentioned this before. So why are we testing? Okay, we're testing because every HTML5 output is different. Okay, if you use our articulate storyline, the HTML5, if you look under the covers, is much different than articulate presenter, which is much different than Adobe Captivate, which is much different than Lectura, Inspire. So all of the different tools have a checkbox that says HTML5. But all the HTML5 published lessons, every lesson is going to be a little different. It's going to display a little bit different. So let's talk about, basically, first of all, the methodologies. I'll throw out that if you use an Agile methodology or a SAM methodology, you're going to be in a little bit better shape in terms of your QA testing. Basically, what Agile and SAM encourages is basically to come up with iterative, sorry, that's a big word that I am not pronouncing so well, but to come out with lessons and to publish more frequently as you go through your lesson development. So don't just, produce and design and then build and then, run all kinds of different things going on, and then in the end you finally publish, okay? If you can publish early and then test on the platform that your users are going to, your learners are going to be accessing the lesson from, you'll get a better idea about, okay, do I have any problem areas here, okay? So rapid prototyping generally works a little bit better than the storyboarding or waterfalling. Storyboarding is actually a little more popular if you're using like a ADDIE methodology, which is analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate. Hey, I remember that. So anyway, so that tends to be a little bit more of a linear sort of methodology. And again, if you don't find out that big surprise or even a little surprise until the very end, it's just going to be a little bit more difficult to adapt. Okay, so I used to work for a QA testing company. Long ago, there was Segway software. They built this really nice little testing tool that ran on your machine and basically would record a bunch of your test scenarios. And so I know a lot of the different terminology. We'll just talk about some of the high-level terminology for testing. And maybe this will give you at least a little bit of an idea about how to approach this. Okay, the first kind of testing will be functional testing. So basically, you're testing the technical functionality. Do all the clicks work? Do all the hyperlinks work? Are there any dead links? Is everything basically working? All the controls are working the way that you want. There's also some non-functional testing. This doesn't necessarily have to be done. You don't always have time to get it done. But if you want to test for performance or security or the UI, this would fall under the category of non-functional testing. And then acceptance testing. So acceptance testing is basically by the SME. All right, so you're basically saying, okay, that's correct, that's correct, that's correct. Okay, you may be actually the subject matter expert or SME on your project, but if you have somebody else, that's where they're going to get involved. Okay, so how do you do all this testing? You're one person, or maybe you've got a small shop or a small department. How are you going to do this? Well, there was an old school, okay, and then I think what I'd like to suggest is a new school for testing. So the old school was you test it. You've got your workstation, you've got your browser that your learner is going to use. You just test it and make sure it works. Well, you know what? With all these different devices and all the different browsers, you would be much better off to have a team approach to this if you can possibly do that. So what you could do basically to test these sort of things is basically decide, okay, who else on my team, including my subject matter expert, could walk through this and do some of these functional tests to make sure that everything is working. And then who has the devices? So if you have a department that has basically the tablets, like let's say you're developing a lesson or a series of lessons for the sales department, and the sales departments have all the tablets. You get somebody from the sales department to participate with you, and you publish the lesson, and basically you go through and say, okay, I want you just to walk through this and make sure that the things are working. And you basically just, again, get together a team to do this kind of testing. So there's on every certified platform. So again, you want to try to test it on the platforms that you know your users are going to be working on. Okay, so as you're going through functional testing, there's 3 different kinds of testing, and I don't expect you to be an expert on QA testing at the end of this, but you may want to think about these kind of tests as you're going through here. So smoke tests is basically, okay, you know what, I want to just make sure everything's working okay basically. So I'm going to publish real quickly. I'm going to click, click, click. Okay, it looks everything's okay. It's a very fast, sort of quick, high-level test. Yeah, and hopefully nothing catches fire. Regression testing. So regression testing basically says, okay, I'm going to test basically at the beginning, and as I build things, basically I want to do functional testing, regression testing, to test basically a lot of those features to see if anything's changed over time. So regression means basically, okay, I clicked here, and I followed a path, okay, as I went through a test. I'm going to follow that same path each time that I go ahead and do a thorough test. And if you follow that same path, you basically can then find potentially anything that's broken since the last time that you published. And then finally, load testing, which is a little bit difficult. They have load testing simulators and things like that, but basically this would be performance testing. So, it'll be particularly important if you have media-rich content. But think about those as you go through your functional testing. Quick word on where to test, okay? Because in a lot of environments, it's just difficult to say, okay, I'm gonna put this on my LMS, and I'm going to upload it so that everybody's testing on the LMS. Sometimes you've got a little sandbox area, sometimes you don't. So if you can put it on the LMS, terrific. But if you can't, Dropbox is a great place to test. Some companies don't like Dropbox, but it's a good, effective way to go out to a folder. Once you create a folder with all of your different published lessons in it, all of your SCORM or all of your whatever your protocol is, you basically will get a URL for every one of the files that you upload to Dropbox, and then basically you can point people to that URL that points to the index.html or story.html or whatever application you're using. Now, there's a couple of tricks with Google Drive that may allow you to use it. Amazon also has Amazon S3, and of course, I have other there, and the other probably should be iSpring Cloud, iSpring Learn. Makes it a very nice, easy, short path to get to an LMS. And if you haven't seen those features, by the way, Brian may or may not get a chance to do a little show and tell on those. But terrific areas there where, okay, you don't have to worry about another system. Basically, if you're developing an iSpring, you use an iSpring Learn or iSpring Cloud as your basically area to share your lessons. And iSpring Cloud in particular, which means basically you don't have to have your learners registered in the system. You can basically send out an iSpring Cloud lesson to anybody, including your mom, because you want to keep mom in the loop on all those wonderful things you're doing. Okay, just real quickly on the non-functional testing. My little animations here aren't going great necessarily. Again, you and your team, and in this case, if you're trying to test out security, if you're trying to test out access, you're going to need a little bit of help. And I would start to think about that in terms of testing. And if you establish it up front, not that people are going to follow through with this, but you'll be able to hopefully get that sort of agreement up front, like, oh yeah, no, I'll be able to help with that. And then when push comes to shove, oops, excuse me, I need to keep an eye on my clock here. When push comes to shove, perhaps somebody's going to be a little too busy to be helping you, but at least you can try to get a commitment up front to have some of the help. So again, there's your non-functional testing. Now, a quick thing on acceptance testing, it kind of like works about the same way. So who's going to do acceptance testing? Well, again, these are your subject matter experts, and don't forget about your business experts as well. It's one thing for an engineer to kind of know the product, but keep in mind sometimes your product manager from marketing, knows really what features are going to differentiate your tool, if you're, again, building a lesson for a tool, or the thing that you're designing training for, like that has a business appeal also. And so, you want to make sure even in the training, I know training is not sales, but it's funny how sometimes, you want to emphasize a certain feature or a certain part of a product that you're building training for. And so the business matter expert sometimes actually has an insight to that the subject matter expert may not. And then again, have a listing of what needs to be tested. The written content, the narrated content, the assessments, any admissions. Make sure that you have this list, or to guide these people. The subject matter expert and the business matter expert most of the time don't understand training, and so they don't know. They'll look through it and they'll go, yeah, that was fun. And fun doesn't cut it. Fun is only a piece of it. You want to make it fun, or you want to make it engaging, I guess, more accurately. But you need to try to, again, make sure that they understand what their mission is and what their scope is and what you hope to get back from them in terms of their feedback. Okay. Again, I feel like I'm rambling. Helena, any questions so far from the crew?
There is one question from Robert. He is wondering if it will be possible for you to share the slide deck after the webinar.
Oh, yes, absolutely. be glad to. In fact, it may already be out on the iSpring site somewhere. I did this presentation for an e-learning guild conference a year or two ago. But regardless, we will absolutely put it out there. And Paulina, any idea, should they check the iSpring blog?
Yeah,
or
sure.
back?
The post will be available, the post with the webinar recording and also the presentation will be available next week on Wednesday.
Great.
So next Wednesday,
Okay.
basically, in iSpring blog.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, if you haven't read the iSpring blog, by the way, it's a terrific resource for a lot of different information. There's some great articles there. They just posted a couple silly videos from the last e-learning guild conference, which is completely embarrassing for me personally. So skip that one. But there's a lot of really good information out there, and so by all means, go to the blog, and you should probably be going there, with frequency just to catch up on all the information. Okay, so let's talk about this fictitious testing team a little bit. So, the challenge basically should be positioned as opportunity, okay? Sorry, Paulina, did you want to have something?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I thought I heard you kind of wanting to jump in there. So you basically have to convince management that multiple resources are going to be needed, basically if they want this lesson to run on multiple platforms, right? You can present to them that you can guarantee that this thing will run on a PC running Windows 7 in Google Chrome, because that's what you have as you're building your lesson, or a PC running Windows 10 in Internet Explorer because that's what you use. But you have to explain you don't have all these other platforms, and if you do want it to run on multiple platforms, you have to basically have a plan to do that. Either they have to give you 1,000 devices and much more time to do testing, or come up with a team approach. So again, in the second bullet there, more resources, less testing for you, and really the bottom line is you wind up with better lessons, right? And then team strategy, again, make sure that they have adequate knowledge of the platform, adequate time to perform the test. So, make sure you give them advance notice and so on and so forth. And then the knowledge of the lesson content is, maybe in that helpful category. Okay, and in the least exciting part of this presentation and in testing in general, because I actually enjoy testing. The test plan can be kind of tedious, okay? But, again, the old adage, failing to plan is planning to fail. If you don't have a test plan, it just doesn't, you really are kind of like keeping your fingers crossed that everybody on the team is going to kind of know what to do. And here's a listing of maybe some of the things the test plan should contain. I won't go through the whole list, but again, assumptions for, any kind of assumptions when you're testing the plan, the test cases that should be used, features that really have to be tested, and so on and so forth. Okay, here's an example. It doesn't have to be complex, okay, but try to make it somewhat organized in terms of 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, so on and so forth. Make sure that you have, again, the type of test that you're going to go through. You may not want to do non-functional testing at all. Just cross it off the list and just do some functional testing and acceptance testing. But make sure you have somewhat defined the hardware that you're going to be using. Certainly, if you have a MacBook audience versus a Mac Air audience versus an iPad audience versus a smartphone audience, define the devices that you're going to be testing on, and then keep in mind the operating systems. That's maybe not quite as important, but browsers. There's definitely differences between the browsers. So if you know for a fact that you really have a device agnostic audience and you have many different browsers potentially that they're going to be using. Plan ahead for that. And again, here's some other things to basically put in or consider to be put into your test plan. Okay. Just a couple of more examples. And then I want to also show you maybe some show and tell as to the why part. So I just recently ran through a bunch of testing. I was doing a presentation at the eLearning Guild conference and basically was going to compare a lot of the different tools. And so I basically set up comparisons of several different tools, and I did some screenshots. And so I want to kind of share those with you to give you an idea about, again, the differences between tool A versus tool B versus tool C. Okay, so let's see. You should try to find out the exact devices and platforms used by your audience, and if it's a wildcard audience, like it's not just one company that you're targeting and that it's multiples, do a Google just to find browser usage statistics, smartphone market share, something along that line, and find out like how many people are now using Chrome versus IE versus Firefox and so on and so forth. Just to kind of give you an idea about, okay, if I want to hit the majority of my audience and I can't test on every single browser or every single device, I want to do the testing on the most popular one, right? So if I know that Chrome's in the lead at 37 and there's far fewer IE users out there, and I could, basically I don't have time to do both, I'm going to do Chrome, okay? I may also want to do Safari just to kind of like make sure that I've got something on a, iOS device, an Apple device for a browser. So that's another consideration as well. Here's just some stats that I took. This is basically screenshot from the smartphone market share. It's a little bit old because it's 2013. But again, this is a sort of search that you should try to do if you can and find out, okay, so how's Android doing versus iPhone, BlackBerry, and I know there's still a few BlackBerry users out there, but you can see here from the searches that I've done, very few BlackBerry, Microsoft, Symbian. So what does that tell you about how hard you're going to work to try to test on those three platforms? Well, if you know that your Salesforce or whoever you're building it for, or your HR department or whoever this app is for, the lesson is for, if you know that they have Blackberries, you're going to test on Blackberries. But if you're thinking, well, this will be a general audience, be pretty logical to maybe cut one of those off the list, or all three for that matter. And again, same holds true with the tablet market share. This does change from time to time. So again, I've got 2013 statistics here. I'm sure you can come up with your own stats. But again, it's a good search to have, just to say, okay, you know what? Here's what we're going to focus on. And you should keep this, because a year from now, somebody's going to say, oh, you don't work on the ACES? How come you don't work on the ACES? The ACES is, 28% of the market. Well, you know what? You did the search, at one point, and at the time that you released your lesson, here were the statistics, okay? Because these stats, of course, will change over time. Okay, my final slide. And then I'll do a little fun thing with, again, the show and tell, and then I'm going to turn it over to Brian. He's going to actually show you some really cool things inside of iSpring. This is real important. After having said all that, real important to basically add a disclaimer. All right, I do this on all of my title pages now. And basically, it's not hard to tell your client, your team, to basically do something like this, because they all get it. They all realize that, okay, what happens if somebody picks this up and tries to run this thing on their Windows phone? Okay, well, you're not saying that they can't run it on the Windows phone, but you want to say something like, okay, this content was designed to be mobile, and it's best viewed on, and just list the things that you've tested on and that you know that it works on, okay? Again, with iSpring, I feel pretty good that it runs on almost everything. And so I actually love the fact that I haven't put it on a system yet or a device yet where it's like, oh boy, it looks like it doesn't work on this. But I'm sure it does not on some obscure device or some obscure browser or somewhere, who knows. But again, if you want to play it safe, put a statement like this somewhere on the title page, and you can just have, one browser, one device, but again, if you want to test on an iPad, there you go. Add iPad to your list. Okay. So before I go, actually, I got just a few minutes before I want to turn this over to Brian, and I will show you the screenshots just for kicks. But any questions before I get into that? Your questions to me are much more important than me to keep babbling in on this.
We have one question. My learners have experienced many issues with Chrome. Do you have feedback from that OS, or I guess browser?
Yeah, the unfortunate part about Chrome is it's the best thing and the worst thing about Chrome. Chrome is always changing, right? It's like Flash used to be. Flash used to change like every month. Chrome changes pretty often as well. If Chrome is not working so well with your tool, and I assume that maybe you're using iSpring, and I haven't noticed any problems with iSpring and Chrome, but it could be a multitude of different things, depending on where you're running Chrome from. But again, the disclaimer itself, maybe on your lesson, would be, okay, this works better in Internet Explorer. And you want to look probably in your lesson to make sure that you're not running something that's really Windows specific, because sometimes, what was that technology that only ran on IE? The term is eluding me now, but there's sometimes Microsoft things or whatever that are part of a development language that would come into play, and then all of a sudden it would work great in Internet Explorer, similar to SharePoint works great in Internet Explorer, but not so well in Chrome. And I haven't heard too much in terms of Chrome and Chrome compatibility issues. Maybe Brian has heard something more about Chrome. Brian, can I bring you in here to give your thoughts or any thoughts on Chrome?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. Yeah, I recommend just looking at doing Google and seeing how Chrome and various other browsers are doing with HTML5 compatibility. That's a good place to start.
I love that idea. Yeah, there's a site called what is it called? There's an HTML website that basically is something like HTML5 how or something like that, and
something like that.
Yeah, I can post that on my slide deck before we post it into iSpring, and maybe that'll be a good place to go as well.
All right.
There is also one more question from Anthony. So he says, we are authoring curriculum for high schools. Where do I learn how to deliver this content to them?
Ah, that's interesting. Yeah, actually the high schools are kind of close to my heart of sorts. My wife is a technology director at a school district here in Massachusetts, so we talk about this all the time. So I would assume that your high school has a learning management system. Most school districts have a learning management system that's kind of at the heart of, it's a multi-purpose sort of system to use in a school district. I would start maybe on delivering it by the learning management system if you can, or, again, if you want to try to start using Dropbox, I think in most school districts they will be fine with using Dropbox. Dropbox Vanilla is free. You can just post your lessons to Dropbox and have the kids go into Dropbox to get access to them. And again, you can look into iSpring Cloud as a potential avenue as well. iSpring Cloud, iSpring Learn, both will allow you to post lessons, and it will allow you to track as well from the iSpring Learn platform as well as cloud.
Right. Thank you very much, Mark. I think at this point,
Okay,
if you
great.
guys don't have any other questions, we might want to move on to Brian's part.
Okay. Sure. All right, let me take over the screen here. Okay. Everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So thanks, Mark, for the excellent presentation. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to share the capabilities of iSpring's free mobile apps with you today. And these apps are the perfect way for your users to view content on their mobile devices in a fully native environment with a convenient content library, a favorites list, and full screen mode with the ability to save content to their devices for offline viewing. So let's start here with a look at the QA capabilities of iSpring authoring tools. If you're creating a PowerPoint-based course with iSpring Suite, you have access to all the separate tools from the toolbar. When you want to see how your course looks on mobile devices, just click the Publish button here. And this Publish button is also available if you're using any of these tools standalone. And for this webinar, I'm going to use iSpring TalkMaster as an example of quick publishing and great responsive design. So first, just click Publish from the toolbar. And of course, you'll want to select an HTML5 option for mobile. And most of these publishing destinations include the iSpring Play mobile option, and this is what you'll check. And it'll prompt users on mobile devices to use the mobile app. And we'll have a look at that later. And first, I'd like to mention something about viewing courses offline with a third-party LMS. If you'd like their statistics to be saved to the LMS when their device reconnects, you should use the Tin Can API LMS standard. So to do that, you just go to the Learning Course tab and select Experience API from the drop-down. And naturally, you should make sure that your LMS supports this standard before publishing. However, if you're using iSpring Learn LMS, you don't have to worry about that at all, and you don't even have to configure the settings. As you can see, the iSpring Play option is ghosted because iSpring Learn has its very own mobile app that synchronizes offline results. So I'm just going to publish for the web so you can immediately see how it looks on different devices. And this is where the QA portion of it comes in. So this is the standard desktop and laptop view, but you can also see how it looks on tablets and smartphones. And you can even rotate the display. And as you can see, all the elements on the screen automatically adapt to the display size and orientation. Okay, so now let's close out of this and go to the iSpring website for more details about the free mobile apps. We'll start with iSpring Play. As you can see, it's available for Apple and Android devices on the App Store and Google Play, and it is a free download for all of your users. So this screenshot here shows you an example of a full e-learning course with video presenter and PowerPoint slides arranged perfectly on a smartphone display. And when you select this iSpring Play option, as I showed you before, users on mobile devices will be shown this intro screen to open the content in the free mobile app. After they tap the launch button, the content will be automatically saved in the library so it's easily accessible in the future. And they can even tap this download button to save the content to their device for offline viewing. This is perfect for students who are on the go and don't always have access to an internet connection. And another fast way to access content is to add it to the favorites list by tapping the star icon here, and you can access your favorites from this button right here. And iSpring mobile apps also offer a full screen mode so your users can view content without any distractions. And once again here, if you're using a Tin Can compliant LMS, your users can take courses offline and synchronize results as soon as their devices reconnect. Which brings us to iSpring Learn mobile app. iSpring Learn LMS and mobile app are already set up to communicate with each other, so you'll have that offline results synchronization capability without having to configure any of the settings. And this mobile app is also available absolutely free for both Apple and Android devices. And here's a screenshot of the interface, which actually looks the same on desktops and laptops. So if your users are switching devices a lot, they won't be hunting for buttons when they use the app. And in order to save content to their device, they just need to tap the download button next to the content item. And as I mentioned before, this app also comes with a full screen mode. And iSpring Learn mobile app also comes with progress tracking capabilities, so your users can always see where they are in their course materials. And another great feature of iSpring Learn is that learners can automatically receive certificates for completed courses, and with the mobile app they can get those certificates right to their device. And finally, the app provides some settings for the user to choose. They can automatically delete completed content to save space on their device. They can automatically download assigned content, and they can use their cellular data to download courses and statistics when a Wi-Fi connection isn't available. And you can test drive at any time. Just go ahead and publish a course right in iSpring and download the mobile app on your device and test it out in the final stage for QA testing. And that's about it for my part, so I'll pass it over to Anna now so she can tell you about the special offer just for webinar participants. Ready, Anna?
Yes, yes. Thank you, Brian. Your presentation was very informative. All right, so my name is Anna, and I'm a customer care manager at iSpring. We've got a special offer for our webinar attendees only. We have an exclusive discount on purchases, upgrades, and additional discounts. Plus, you'll get a 1-hour training session with our experts for free. The regular price for our training session is $97 per user. So if you're interested, please leave your emails in the chat and I'll get back to you with more details about the offer. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. And I think at this point we are ready to move on to a Q&A session. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, perfect. So,
Okay, I think I see some.
Will not be able to talk, is that correct?
sorry?
I think the participants cannot speak. However,
Right.
they can type in questions to the chat box.
Right, yes. So if guys, any of you have any questions, you are more than welcome to submit them in the question box that's on the right side of your GoToWebinar window.
I do see someone who's interested in the free training.
Yes, and also, sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say I would suggest you contact sales. There's the contact information right there on the screen.
Right, or you could just submit your email address and we'll get back to you right after the show.
Yeah. Yeah, they left the email.
Okay, perfect. So there is one question from Lynn, and she says that I've heard that Dropbox has compatibility issues with iSpring features. Can somebody comment on that part?
Actually, I used to use Dropbox back when I worked in tech support, and I never had any problems with it, as a matter of fact. So that's news to me.
Yeah, you know, I actually noticed that it kind of goes up and down. There's a feature I know in SharePoint, and for some of my clients that have SharePoint, I also use SharePoint as a platform to do reviews and things like that. There's a feature inside of it that allows you to basically run Flash content and any kind of lessons from there. And I think Dropbox has the same issue potentially that SharePoint does, is that once in a while they change the configuration defaults so that when you click on an index.html, instead of launching the web application, which is really what your e-learning lesson is, it will open up the or it'll either open up or download the index.html file, and just think, oh, well, you just want to open the file or you just want to download the file.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that's the one thing I've noticed, and I've noticed that it kind of happens sporadically, where when it first happened, I thought, oh, well, Dropbox stopped supporting this. And then a week later, it worked again.
Wow.
Have you noticed that, Brian?
Well, you know what I learned was that you need to put the content that you want to share directly in the public folder. And actually,
Okay.
as far as I know, they don't provide that public folder option with the free plan anymore on Dropbox.
I've heard that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
However, I suppose it costs a little bit to get there, but usually what you can do
It's not too
is
bad.
I think you could still right-click, even if you're storing them for yourself, and you can get a share URL for almost any file that you have in Dropbox.
Right.
So yeah, maybe a little bit of a fight, and again, maybe one of the other options that was on that slide would work better for you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always try iSpring Cloud as well.
Absolutely.
That is true.
It's like a charm.
Yep.
Right. And we also have another question from Our. How do you handle accessibility? 508 compliance.
Right. So I'm going to be, I'm actually, you may sense, I'm turning red right now because I'm embarrassed to say I don't do much, but what I do is I make sure that the narration script is always in the notes section of my PowerPoint, and I make sure that that there's a tab on the contents bar that at least shows users pretty clearly that this is your narration script.
Right.
For those folks that have hearing impairments. But I know there's more to 508 compliance than just that. But again, that's the step that I make sure that I always take for that reason.
I know that.
And I just want to.
I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly mention that iSpring products do have Section 508 compliance, and we actually have the VPAT of that, the Voluntary Product Accessibility Template. So I'll just send that link to you guys in the chat right here now.
Oh, thank you very much.
And that was actually for version 7, and we actually have version 8 now, so you can expect even more.
Great.
Okay, go ahead.
And I was also going to mention that sometime soon we're going to have a dedicated article by Jane Bozart about Section 508 compliancy. So just be on the lookout to that post, and it's going to appear in our blog sometime soon.
Very nice.
Okay, link sent.
Perfect. So another question from Barrett is when I convert PowerPoint file into iSpring 8, then some issues like current slide audio is playing on next slide, customized transition is not smooth, and I think if you have these types of issues, the best thing would be to contact our support team, and they'll be happy to investigate your case.
Yes, correct. There is a checkbox when you're inserting audio that basically says, do you want this audio just to be on, slide number 10? And I think the default is basically just to let it run through various slides, but I always make sure that that checkbox is checked. So if you're inserting an audio, and this assumes that you're recording outside in Audacity or some other tool for your audio, when you go to insert it, make sure that that checkbox is checked.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to plug the new iSpring audio features too. I just found out that if I have 10 different slides that have audio, you no longer have to do them one at a time. When you're selecting your audio, you can select basically 10 different audio files. And if you, again, have that checkbox checked, it's going to put basically all 10 of those WAV files or MP3 files into exactly the right place, for slide number 1 and slide number 2 and slide number 3, etc.
Right.
So it's a real time saver to do multiple audio insertions as you're going through. It's a really terrific feature.
Right, and I'd just also like to mention that it depends on the order that you have it sorted in the Windows file window when you click the import button. So just in case your file names aren't in sequential order, what you can do is sort it by date and then just select them all, and that'll sync them up.
Yep.
Okay, and we have another question from Shannon. So she says, we will typically be publishing for upload into our LMS, which is tin can compatible. Should we always select this, or should we sometimes use an older format like SCORM 1.2?
Yes, so unfortunately SCORM does not support offline results synchronization. That was actually, Tin Can is basically the same as SCORM but with more features. The things you can record in a Tin Can LRS are a lot more broad than the things you can record with the things you can track with SCORM. So it's got to be either Tin Can or an LMS such as iSpring Learn, which automatically has that feature built into it. And as I was mentioning before, if you do use something like iSpring Learn LMS, you won't have to configure the LRS endpoint and all that. But yeah, it's got to be Tin Can or something like that.
Okay, thank you. And there are lots of questions about the special offers, so I think Anna will be contacting all those leads after the webinar.
Yes, sure. Yes, I have all your emails, so I'll get back to you shortly and tell you more about our special offer. And don't worry, upgrades are included too. So you get additional discounts on your upgrades as well.
Okay, perfect. So we have a couple more minutes to answer any of your questions. So if you have them, please submit them in the question section.
Let's see, I see someone asking about importing an Excel quiz to Moodle.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is you can import an Excel quiz into iSpring QuizMaker. When you go to the app menu and select Import from Excel, you'll see a link there that will take you to a web page with the Excel template, and you can just copy the info from your own Excel file to that template and then import it into QuizMaker. And then in order to get it to Moodle, you'd publish to SCORM. I'd suggest 1.2. And then I actually recently published a full tutorial on how to upload to Moodle. Excuse me. I'll send you a link to that right now.
Thank you, Brian.
Sure. It'll just take me a sec here.
So I just wanted to mention one more time that next Wednesday we are going to publish a recording of this webinar, and also we'll be sharing the slide deck from Mark Simon in this blog post as well. So if you are interested, you are more than welcome to check out our blog next Wednesday.
Hi, this is Brian from iSpring.
Hi, Brian. Okay, so I
Sorry, I
think
was just finding that video. I'll send
that's
the
okay.
link right here.
I figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining.
Yep, thank you very much, Mark, for speaking for us today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. That was fascinating.
All right, so I think we're ready to wrap up at this point. And we'll be contacting everybody who left their email addresses after the show. And again, be on the lookout for this webinar recording. And all right, see you at the next webinar. Bye, Mark. Bye, Brian.
Okay.
Bye, Anna.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.